Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features X Factor number 62, cover dated January 1991, and this is X-Tinction Agenda Part 9, that is to say, it is the finale, the final issue of the crossover series between Uncanny X-Men, New Mutants and X Factor. The cover caption, Final Strike, is a callback to the cover caption on the first issue of the crossover, which was Uncanny X-Men 270, which had the cover caption First Strike, which also featured Havoc prominently on the cover using his plasma blast power with the power signature of the concentric circles and his body in that kind of cruciform position. So a very deliberate image to bookend the crossover event. And it is by Jim Lee, so a quality image in and of itself, but interesting to see him inking his own pencils here too. And he's got a slightly different style from Scott Williams. In the past, I've characterized it as a more hesitant, tentative line than Scott Williams' more confident line. And also Lee's style of inking, it's very kind of scratchy in places as well. Part of that hesitation in the line work, and thin too, a thinner line than the one that Scott Williams uses. So obviously here on the cover we have some of the prominent players in X-Tinction Agenda, and also, but you kind of have to pay attention because it's obscured by the coloring here. We have the main villain, Cameron Hodge, and it looks like he is down and dealt with finally. So let's open this one. Oh, one last thing to note, which is the new corner box image of X Factor, and it's by Whilce Portacio, and he is the incoming new artist on the title. Louise Simonson will continue as scripter only for 2 more issues, and those are 2 pretty good issues, 63 and 64, over Whilce Portacio's plot, and I have reviewed those before on the channel. Do check them out. They really are a pretty good swan song from Simonson as scripter on the title. So let's open this one up to the splash page featuring Rain in her werewolf form and Richter, and the creative team here: Louise Simonson, writer; Jon Bogdanove, penciler; Alan Milgrom, inker; Task Force Z, letterers. And what that means is that there is a bunch of different letterers working on this. That's always an indication of a little bit of a deadline crunch. Glynis Oliver, the sole colorist, and there we go. So in the narrative captions, we get some catch up on previous events, and we have both Richter and Rain who are tracking down Cameron Hodge in order to destroy him finally. And Rain reminds Richter of his promise to shake the Citadel apart, which would echo what Havoc did way back in Uncanny X-Men 238 when he shook it to the ground, or rather destroyed it with his plasma blast. So turn the page and we have the title of this final chapter of the crossover, Capital Punishment. That's a pretty good anchor image there of both Rain and Richter getting surprised by Cameron Hodge in his monstrous scorpion-like form. And you can see here that his head is loose and extended out on the back of this long pipe, if that's a good way to describe it. And yeah, he really is a monstrous looking figure. And he says to them, again, just as is his way throughout this crossover, he's a real scenery chewing ham villain. Well, he says, 2 of the insects who destroyed my lab. Call for help all you want, Gene joke. There is nothing Cable or anyone can do to save you. So, you know, they were all gung-ho, or Richter was anyway, but he has a fear of Cameron Hodge that goes back to a trauma of being Hodge's prisoner way back in X Factor number 16. But Rain here looks determined to take on Hodge. I like the shadow of Hodge's head with the wires coming out of it there on the floor. I think that Jon Bogdanove, after a not so great middle chapter on his issues of the X Factor part of the crossover, does a really good job here on his very last issue of X Factor. There's some great anchor images throughout. The only wrinkle is, and I've said it before, Al Milgrom's inks. I don't think his inking is, you know, 100% a good fit for Bogdanove. I would have liked to have seen an inker with a little bit more finesse on Bogdanove's pencils and see how that might turn out. But this is a really good image here of Cable. The twisting of his torso is pretty good. It makes his pose look dynamic. It's the same here with Storm in the Mutate costume. She's got a nice twist to her hips as well. That is well done by Bogdanove. So Cable gets a call from Richter, and he tells Rick to control Rain. We'll be there, he says. But Cable communicates to Storm Rain's not listening, and Storm says, I fear in her wolf girl form she no longer thinks quite rationally, and she loathes Hodge. But Cable fills in, well, that's with good reason, of course. So this is a nice image of Cable kicking open an air shaft grating or grill in order to get into the air ducts and get to the location of Cameron Hodge. We see here, this is a nice moment of further transformation of Rain. Like, she's grown huge in size. Like, the innate power of her mutant werewolf form was amplified by the transmutation process that the gene engineer made her go through. He tweaked it so that she would, in her werewolf form, have all her memories back and also be huge and have all that potential unleashed, because the gene engineer was plotting against Cameron Hodge all along. So you can see how big she is here, leaping at Hodge, and she goes to bite on the tubing that connects his head to his body. Boy, look, the shapeshifter plans to sever my neck wires, he says. But, and I like the sound effects here, chomp and then zot, as she's blasted away by what would we call it, like an electric shock here, or electric defenses on the body. But as you've noted, Richter, teeth are no match for technology. And this is a nice little image here as he retracts his head back in to the main body of his mechanical form. And we'll see also that he protects his head by obviously a blast proof windshield going in front of it, but we can't see it in these images because we're looking behind at his body, but we'll see it on another page coming up. So Richter finally gets his courage up and he uses his powers against Hodge. Of course, he knows that it's not going to end Hodge. All this is going to do, he thinks to himself, is get me blown away. But what choice have I got? So he basically disturbs Hodge's balance there, that's the very least, and Hodge drops Rain, so she's free. And just at this point we have Cable and Storm making their way through those air duct tunnels, and of course that's a challenge for Storm because of her claustrophobia. That's a really good image there of Cable crawling through the air duct. Nice work on the anatomy there, the musculature, really bodybuilder bulging arms there in Bogdanove's pencils. And how does Cable know where to go? Well, he says here, this is a nice little detail, I memorized the Citadel's layout from the SHIELD documents Val Cooper gave us. So that's a big call back to the first X-Factor issue in the crossover, issue number 60. So I like that. That's nice attention to detail and something paying off later on, and showing something about the character, about Cable's character in this particular issue. So Hodge hears them scuttling through the vents, and he's about to say, I know you're above me, and so he shoots his, it looks like his tail, right through the air duct and grabs Cable, pins him with the end of the tail in Cable's side, catches him there like that. And Storm thinks Hodge's tail stabbed up through the air shaft. He's hooked Cable. Yeah, we can see that. So I think that's, sometimes Louise Simonson has a flaw whereby sometimes she will have characters either say or think what is clear in the artwork. And part of me thinks, I was thinking about it, why is that? Is it because she primarily thinks of her audience, her readers, as children? Like, does she think of them as potentially 8-9 years old? and that's why she's doing that kind of thing. Not 100% sure, but it's something that, for my taste, doesn't work. If you're a little bit older as a reader, if you're anywhere above 12, I think it doesn't work. It's superfluous. But in any case, that's what I was talking about earlier. This big windshield that's protecting Hodge's head. So he has taken defensive measure against all these attacks he's undergoing. Storm uses her lightning power against him. And Hodge says, "How gratifying, Weather Witch, to face you at last," because he blames her for everything that's gone wrong for him, because she was another one of the Gene-Engineer's secret weapons, and when she touches any of the mutants whose powers were cancelled by Wipeout, she restores them. But Cable here on the ground says to Storm, "You can't stop him alone," and then he calls through to Cyclops, "Hear me, radio Storm and Hodge, she needs help." So Cyclops gets the call, "We'll be there at Cable as soon as we can," he says. This is a really nice anchor image here of Archangel, and again you can see that nice twisting of the torso, the shoulders twisted against the line of the hips. That's something to always do if you want to have dynamic body poses of characters. A nice little trick, and Bogdanove does it very well. So Archangel gets the call too. They're not far away, Psyche says. "I hear Storm's thunder. I'm on my way." So Cyclops tells him, "Go for Hodge's back hump." This was something that was figured out by Iceman in the previous part of the crossover, New Mutants 97. Forge thinks it's his phasing mechanism, and be careful, Hodge is dangerous. So Archangel is on his way. I think that last part really was, again, a bit superfluous. Like, everybody knows now that Hodge is dangerous. But in any case, now we have this little interesting character moment between Wolverine and Cyclops. Of course, they have a long time rivalry over, a long time difference of character. Cyclops, cool, logical, detached. Wolverine, passionate, and very much someone who is sense, perception focused, as opposed to Cyclops' cerebral thinking out of things. And something established by Claremont afterwards is their rivalry over one Jean Grey. And remember, at this point in continuity, Cyclops is not married to Jean Grey. He was married to Madeline Pryor, her clone. This is a nice image here of these two guys kind of almost at the point of butting heads. And a detail that I like here in Bogdanove's art is how he has Wolverine's lower jaw jutting out, and you can see the bottom row of teeth there outside the front row of teeth, and also the bend in the nose as well. That is a real look of anger on Wolverine's face. So Cyclops says to Wolverine, "Back off, Logan. This is none of your business. We're teammates. That makes it my business. She's as much a fighter as you," because they were arguing over whether Jean should be involved or not, and Cyclops thought not, and Logan says yes. And Jean intervenes with her TK powers, her telekinesis, and she says to both of them, this is nice storytelling here as well, where we've got her pointing her finger into Cyclops' chest, and then she gives Wolverine a chewing out as well. "Logan's right," she says to Cyclops. "I'm not going to hold back when my actions can make a difference any more than you would." And then she turns to Logan, "And I am perfectly able to speak for myself," she says, "and make my own choices. Is that understood?" So the two lads are impressed. Cyclops says she's some woman, and Logan responds, "There's not another like her." Or rather, it's the other way around. So that little tail should be tilted a little bit more towards Wolverine. He says she's some woman, and Cyclops responds, "There's not another like her." And he thinks to himself, and this is Louise Simonson device where characters will say one thing, but we do get into their heads too. "And I'm so afraid I might lose her. It's making me act soft in the head." So a nice bit of additional characterization there, and good twisted anatomy and perspective on Jean's body there by Bogdanove. Really good work. He's putting everything into this final chapter. It's the best of the 3 issues that he was involved in my opinion. It's almost like he's auditioning for his next job, which will be at DC Comics on Man of Steel with Louise Simonson. In any case, back to Cameron Hodge, and at this point Storm is still engaged with him, but he is shooting at her with his what is he shooting at her here? He's been shooting spikes at characters, but he turns to a machine gun here. Storm is caught by, oh yeah, look at that, that's nicely done as well. So she's caught by those spikes, and of course Hodge can phase, so he's phasing up into the tight space that she's crawled into. She thinks he's phased into the vent behind me, and I've even less room here. So Storm really up against it, and Hodge here with those tentacles whipping around her limbs says to her, "There's no escape for you." And look at that maniacal grin on his face. That's really, really nice storytelling on this page. And again, look at that little borderless panel there. Tiny figure of Storm as she falls. Actually, it's kind of, in a sense, there's a disjunction between the thought she thinks and the image here. I like the visuals of the image and the variation of the layout, but she thinks here, he's right, I cannot maneuver easily here to create wind effects when she's in a load of space. But anyway, just a minor little comment there. So more action again. That's a great anchor image of Archangel. Looks really, really dynamic. And again, you can just see that twisting of the body that Bogdanove is doing so well in this particular issue. So Archangel arrives. And of course, Hodge has a special hatred for Archangel because it was Archangel who cut his head off in the first place. Well, Archangel. And they used to be old friends. To the rescue, my oldest, most hated enemy. You want me to drop her, Warren? Old friend? Then make me. So we see these two going up against each other. Warren with his wings doing some major damage against Cameron Hodge, but Hodge not stopped entirely. You think me immobilized, demon, he says, snared, unable to escape. Mutant fool, you may have destroyed my ability to phase. Okay, so he took out that hump on his back. But I still have my cyborg strength. And this is horrifying. This image always struck with me over the decades, where Hodge just basically opens up his mouth. He looks absolutely inhuman. And this little acid gun or whatever it is pops up out of his tongue and squirts at Warren. Squirt, splat. That's disgusting and horrifying. And Hodge explains it, of course, what it is exactly. A polymer compound, Warren. I designed a molecular adhesive. I thought it was acid, but it's not. And so Warren is disabled. His wings are caught, and then he's wrapped up in Hodge's tentacles. And Hodge says to Archangel, "Your death, unlike that of the others, will require my undivided attention. I want to savor it," like he's a real sadist. And Archangel thinks, "I can't cut through with my razor wings, nor release my wing darts." And so Hodge extrudes from his mechanical body a buzzsaw, and he's aiming it right at Archangel's neck. So that's where we leave it while the scene switches to Beast, who's gotten himself together after an attack by Hodge in New Mutants number 97. And he's crawling over here towards Forge. Sykes said, "Get these guys out of here." But there are 5 of them, all in worse shape than I am. And after that pounding I took, I don't know if I can carry them. So what's Beast going to do instead? Well, he decides first order of business is to get inside the main corridor. And there he sees a bunch of mutates. And he asks them for help. And he thinks to himself, they're just staring at me. Not enough authority. Too tentative. Let's try that again. "All right, Eugene joke bums," he says. "Get over here. I have a job for you, and I expect you to put your backs in it." And that works. So that's a nice little bit there too, I think. And then back with Archangel. Does he have his head chopped off? Of course not, because Havoc arrives just in time. And Havoc has remembered who he truly is. And so he's using his plasma blasts against Hodge. But to no avail. Sorry to disappoint you, mutants, but I'm not giving up this little prize even for you, as Archangel remains wrapped up in those tentacles. So let's continue. But what does he do? He throws him at Havoc, and he's got this this spike here, ready to pin them both. I'll gladly destroy the both of you together, he says. And just at this point, someone else arrives, and it's Jean. So she pulls them away from the path of that talon or spike that Hodge slams down on the pair, just in the nick of time. And Wolverine is here. This is a nice little bit where he's got his claws popped and he's ready to stick Havoc if he's still a magistrate. He says here, "Good work, Genie. Your TK shield saved them both. As for this Joker," but Havoc reveals, "No, I'm on your side. I remember who I am." And this is a funny bit from Cyclops where he says, "My brother's stubborn, but hit him on the head enough times and eventually he'll see reason." Okay, so that's a nice way to solve family squabbles, eh? For kids to learn that lesson from this particular comic. So all four of them now go into action against Hodge because he's considerably weakened, as Cyclops points out. So maybe they're going to be able to defeat him now. You see everybody taking him on. I like that little image of Jean using her TK to position Wolverine right on top of Hodge's back so that he can rip away with his adamantium claws. And he has managed, of course, with those unbreakable claws, to smash through the windshield and threaten Hodge's head there. "Your claws are sharp, Wolverine," he says, "but mine is sharper." So he catches Wolverine in the back with that scorpion tail. That's a great little image there. You can see the tip of the tail going right out through Wolverine's stomach. But Jean uses her TK to help Wolverine. She was going to pull him off, but just at that point, Cameron Hodge smashes her with his tail. This is a great image here where Wolverine stabs the tail behind his back with his claws. Great anatomy on Wolverine's back there, every muscle straining. As I said, this is Bogdanove's best chapter of the issue. I'd love to see it with inked by an inker with a little bit more finesse than Al Milgrom. Some of the pages are quite muddy, like this one in particular here, because of the thickness of Milgrom's line. And then we pick up with the injured young mutants, including Sunspot, Boom Boom, Cannonball, and Jubilee, and Beast arrives. So Boom Boom there has the ashes or remains of Warlock. Beast tells him they don't look so good, but Cannonball is defiant. He says, "Well, we're enough to deal with Hodge, Mr. McCoy." So Beast has brought the other injured mutants, including Iceman there, and he's got the mutates to help out, bringing Forge and Banshee. And just at this point, they are met by Chief Magistrate Anderson. And so what's going to happen? Are they going to be arrested? And Anderson says, "We magistrates know that our president is insane, American. We've neutralized her." So you can see they've arrested her, even as your teammates are working to neutralize Cameron Hodge. How can we aid you? So it's not going to be another fight. Instead, these enemies are going to join forces against a common enemy, the monster that is Cameron Hodge. So Wolverine's still stuck on the end of the spike of Hodge's tail. The two brothers here pouring it on, as Wolverine says, "That's it, Psych, keep pouring it on. Get this bum where it hurts." And Havoc says, "It's working, Scott." He's retreating towards the roof. So Wolverine has actually cut himself free from the end of Hodge's tail and pulled himself off the end of the spike as well. But in this era, Wolverine's healing factor is not working at optimum rate. In fact, it's winding down because Claremont had a plot, which Louise Simonson would know, where Wolverine was to die and become the master assassin of the hand before a big finale in Uncanny X-Men 300, which of course never happened. And Havoc realizes about Wolverine. Remember, they were teammates in the Outback era. He's in no shape to continue the fight, Scott. And Wolverine himself says, "Much as I hate to admit it, bub, you may be right. in relation to himself and Jean too. So what is Cyclops going to decide? And this is it. He says, take the communicator and rendezvous with the beast at safe point B. Alex and I'll go after Hodge. Take care of Jean and the others for me. Wolverine, get them out of here. Keep them safe. They're in your hands. So the situation is such that these old rivals are, aligned, and Cyclops is trusting Wolverine with Jean's safety, even as he was thinking earlier that he's worried about losing her, and primarily to Wolverine after the two shared a kiss in the previous X-Factor issue when imprisoned by Hodge. So up on the roof, on the pinnacle of the Citadel, damaged Hodge is clambering around on the roof. Cyclops tells him it's over. The X-Men are free, our powers restored, your agenda's finished. So what does Hodge do? He rounds on them. It looks like that shield, that windshield over his head has been what word do I want? Rebuilt or fixed. Don't count on it, Scotty, he says as he rounds on him. Even now my circuits are repaired is the word. The damage you've done. Soon I will be as good as new. And then I shall wreak such revenge upon you, Jean jokes, and wipe your kind off the face of this planet. So the two brothers here, and it looks like they've joined hands, use their combined powers to take a huge blast at Hodge. And we can see the size of it there at the top of the Citadel. And on the ground, we have all the various X-Men, New Mutants, and members of X-Factor getting patched up and bandaged. And Jean is looking up at the roof of the Citadel. So the whole thing is destroyed up there. She's concerned, obviously, about Scott and Alex. Wolverine says they're letting Hodge have it, Red, with both barrels. They were the only ones who could. Beast says they're doing it for Warlock, for all of us. And Magistrate Anderson is impressed as well. I never dreamt they had such power. If they keep that up soon, there will be nothing left. The very heart of Genosha will be gone. So up top, Hodge is still alive. He is still alive. You've taken your best shot, and as you can see, you've failed, he says. I'm still alive, functioning, and not to be defeated by the likes of you. So he's defiant right to the end. So how is this going to be resolved? Well, they keep blasting him until his head is detached from a cyborg body. And he remains defiant and boastful. I will live to destroy you, he exclaims, no matter what we do to him, says Havoc. He just keeps on talking. There's nothing you can do to silence me, says Hodge. I'm your worst nightmare, for I've made a deal with a demon and cannot die. That's nastier. Even your own death will not protect you. This is a great bit, by the way. This is excellent. Like, Hodge is this, hatred and sadistic desire for vengeance personified. Even your own death will not protect you, he says to them. In my hatred, I will pursue you, even beyond the grave. Don't count on it, Hodge. You may be your own private nightmare, but it's time to wake up. By the way, the whole point here, like, he's saying he cannot die, but even if he cannot die, he'll pursue them from beyond the grave, which is to say, I kind of feel it kind of goes two ways. Like, he's saying he can't die, so he's not going to be in a grave, but when they die, that's the really dark aspect of it. When they die, he's going to pursue them in hell with presumably another deal with Nastia or some other demon. Like, that's the really dark element here, and I think that's so great. So Cyclops blasts his head off the top of the Citadel, and this is another great moment, and it reminds me, of course, of the ending of Die Hard, the first movie, as did all of the action in the air ducts earlier. So Havoc thinks, Scott, we did it. Knocked him over the edge. He must have fallen 160 stories. Nothing can have survived, but he has. And he sends out this tentacle from his mouth again. It's like horrifying. And grabs Alex around the neck, is choking him and pulling him over the edge. But Scott grabs his brother's hand. "Don't worry, I've got you, Alex." And look, they're hanging off the side of a 160-story skyscraper building. "Do you, Cyclops, do you really?" mocks Hodge. "Don't you see the ledge you're holding is crumbling?" So Havoc says, "He's right, Scott. Let go of me. Save yourself." "No way, Alex. I won't lose my brother." And they're falling off the side of the ledge. "Fraternal love," mocks Hodge. "How sickeningly human. I shall survive, of course, while you little heroes will be splats upon the concrete." So this thing is just keeps on going, driving right to the end. This guy is impossible to deal with, it appears, given that he's unkillable. But Jean intervenes with her TK and grabs Hodge away from Havoc and Cyclops and lets his head fall to the ground while she cushions their fall and brings them down safely with her telekinesis. But where does Hodge's head land? Lands at the feet of Rain in her werewolf form. He's laughing there. Again, just like a ham villain. What a ride, if not a totally satisfactory conclusion to this little battle. And Rain is aghast that he's still alive. "All the better to torment you, my dear," he says. And this is excellent. She grabs him by the face and rips the wires out of his face. So we don't get to see the destroyed face, because that would be presumably too horrifying for a code-approved comic in 1991. So she shreds the head and flings the remains into the rubble on the street and says to Richter he promised to shake the Citadel down to the ground, and so he does it. And they bury Hodge's head alive in the wreckage of the Citadel. Now, of course, given what he said about the fact that he can't die and the head is there in the wreckage, it really sets up the fact that Hodge could return again. So there must have been a better way to deal with him. I would have kept that head and would have had Forge work on some kind of prison for Hodge and put the head in and basically throw away the key. I think that would be the better option there. But in any case, Chief Magistrate Anderson, several days later on the TV, saying, "As a result of a severe nervous breakdown, Genosha's president ordered the kidnapping of American citizens, thus flouting international law and causing the death of one of her captives." That was Warlock. "Genosha's military has overthrown her and temporarily seized control of the government pending lawful elections." And we finally learned the president's name. President Renault is in a high security mental institution pending trial as soon as she's deemed capable. Right, so that is the end of the president. Of course, there was nothing wrong with her mentally. She knew exactly what she was doing. So this is all PR for Genosha, and Wolverine says, which will be never. A speech filled with half-truths, Anderson, to cover your dirty little world. But Anderson comes back at Wolverine saying, "Half-truths which will protect our mutates from outside exploitation." And Havoc says something interesting here. He says, "I'll be staying, Chief Magistrate, to make certain that the mutates are no longer exploited from within." And Rain elects to stay too. And Richter, who's in love with her, wonders why. And she explains, "I'm a mutate now, Rick, and my place is here with these people. I need to help them and to try to ensure that some good comes of the horror that was done to me and to those others. Boom Boom, you and Rick take Warlock's ashes, sprinkle them on Doug's grave for me." And so they agree to that and walk away, shoulders slumped. So the victory is not complete, with Havoc and Rain staying behind in Genosha. And here we are, last page. And, the series opened with the return of X-Men who had been thought dead by the New Mutants and X-Factor. Well, New Mutants most particularly, because X-Factor realized they were alive during Inferno. And here we have the New Mutants now burying one of their own at the end of the crossover series. So they're emotional about it. Richter says to Doug, to Warlock, you and Doug rest in peace. And as they walk away, a country has been freed from slavery, but at a terrible cost. I only hope that Rain is right and that a greater good will continue to be served by Warlock's sacrifice, says, I think, Cannonball there. And then the ashes, the remains of Warlock, begin to sparkle beneath the azure sky. The mound of ashes seems to flash an answer. Is it merely the sunlight glinting on metallic dust, or the promise of something more? Well, it would turn out to be the promise of something more, namely Douglock, in a couple of years' time. So that is the end of X-Tinction Agenda. 9 parts, and uneven in quality throughout. Most definitely, for me, the stronger parts were the Chris Claremont and Jim Lee chapters of the crossover. But this is a strong finish. There's some really nice things in this finishing climactic issue. Bogdanove's art is strong. Would have been better with a different inker, in my opinion. But Simonson does a good job with just keeping the tension going right to the very end in terms of how on earth are they going to deal with a monster like Cameron Hodge. And some nice memorable moments and great anchor images as well in the art. Well, I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary. If you did, please like the video in YouTube and consider sharing it too. It really helps the channel. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.